Working with brushes in Illustrator. So we have a really great brush panel in Illustrator, and this is where all of our default preloaded brushes are stored. So I'm going to open up that panel under Window and look for brushes, and here it is. So depending if you have played with this panel in the past, you may have many more brushes visible than just the defaults. This panel has a few new brushes that have been defined with the document that I have open. So like I said, there are preloaded brushes that are installed by default, but we can also build our own brushes. So to do this, we're able to utilize 5 different types of brushes, and I just want to show you in this lesson the different types. We'll discuss more in detail in future lessons. So if I go to the new icon down here at the bottom of the panel, it says New Brush. I will get a box that asks me what type of a brush I would like to create. Notice how a couple of them are grayed out. They're not options. I cannot select them at the moment. And this is because those two brushes need art to be defined first. I'll show you that in a minute. Let's start with the calligraphy brush. So if you've ever written in calligraphy, you know how that works with thick and thins. If I click OK, I will get a calligraphy brush options dialog box, and each of these new brushes you'll see something very similar to this. So many of them have different options for playing around with these settings. So I can change the angle. First of all, I could name it up here at the top. I can change the angle, and you can see how the angle is rotating in my little preview here. I can change the roundness. Right now it's perfectly round, and I can make it be more of an oval shape. And again, changing my angle here. And then the size. How large I would like this to be. Now, I have in many of these fixed and random. So the fixed basically fixes to this specific attributes, and it will not change. Random will randomize it. So if I choose random here, I just want to show you, it does a variation of a certain degree, in this case for the angle. If I did random in size, I do a variation in point size. So I might be at 33 point right now, but I could do a variation of maybe 10, and you can see what will happen here. I've got 15. It's going to vary, and it's going to be a random variation. So you can go ahead and play with those to see how that changes. If I click OK, I will get a new brush. Now the calligraphy brushes will be stored up towards the top of the panel, and you can see right here is my new brush. The scatter brushes. So scatter brushes are where we can disperse copies of an object along a path. So let's just pick the star icon here, and actually it's already been defined, but let's do this again. If I have it selected and I click New, now you can see that both scatter and art are options. If I click scatter and select OK, a little bit larger dialog box opens for this specific brush. Again, I can name it, and I can change my size, my spacing, a scatter, and a rotation. So like I said, the scatter brushes disperses copies of an object along the path. Let's reduce the size here just a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So here's my defined scatter brush. I'm going to click on my stroke here, and I'll click on my brush, and you can see it has applied. Let's do the same thing with the calligraphy. Click on a stroke, click on a path, and there's my thick and thin of my calligraphy. Right? So if I wanted to, I can double click and I can go back and change. Say I don't want my spacing so far. I can go ahead and change that. Let's preview it. When I preview it, you'll notice that as I drag this out of the way, I get a live update for that object that has it applied. So if I click OK, I'll get a little warning that says, this brush is in use and some strokes may have overridden its options. Do you want to apply the change to the existing brush strokes? And so yes, I do. And if I apply it, then it will change. So that's just my little warning saying, hey, you've already applied it. By doing this, you're going to change what you've applied. Do you realize you're going to do that? So that was what that was all about. So that's the scatter brush. The art brush, let's go ahead and click on the pencil and again do new. I already have one defined, but I'll just show you how this works. I'm going to do art brush, click OK. And so again, some options here. Probably the one to look at closer on the art brush is the scale proportionally or stretch to fit or stretch between guides. This brush will be used as we talk about graphs and things down the road in the future. But really this art brush is where we take some piece of art, an illustration or an object that we've drawn, and we stretch it along the path. So again, if I click on a path and click my pencil, you can see how that has been applied. The next one that I have is the bristle brush, and I'm just going to briefly show you the bristle brush. We'll talk about it more again in a future lesson. This is the newest brush in Illustrator, and if I click to open up its dialog box, what Illustrator tried to do was to create a brush that really mimicked a real live painting tool. And you probably will have better effects with this if you have some sort of drawing tablet that you utilize a stylus or a pen with, because this is more of a real world application in Illustrator is what they're trying to do. So again, I can choose up here the type of shape of my brush, and if you're a painter, you might understand and have a favorite. If I do a fan brush, you can see my size increases the size, and you might be able to see that there's, it looks like there's thicker areas of paint and lighter areas of paint. Bristle length, you can see the different effects, the density from high to low. And the thickness, how thick, coarse, or fine my brush is, and the paint opacity from being very thick to being almost translucent, not much paint in my brush, and the stiffness. So if I click OK, and then I click my last one here and apply this, now the bristles will have a little icon here that tells me this is a bristle brush, and there's that brush that I made. So there's the stroke applied. The last one that I'm going to show you, and I'm going to go there and just show you what will happen if I don't have anything organized before I attempt to start this. Let me click OK. I'm in the pattern brush dialog, and the pattern brush is basically repeating a pattern along a path, and there are 5 tiles. Right here, we have the outer corner, we have a side, we have an inner corner, we have a start, and we have an end. So what we do is we define what those areas of my path look like if it applies to the specific path I have selected. Now this basically gets your, if I scroll down, options from my swatches. These are those patterns that we just applied earlier in our lesson. So I'm going to cancel because I don't have defined what I want to. Let's go to swatches, and if I want this artwork to be one of my options, I'm just going to click and drag it into swatches. Now it's a stored pattern. Same with this one. Now it's a stored pattern. I can navigate back to brushes, which happens to be in my same group here. Click new, go to pattern, click OK. And so now it actually thought it knew what I wanted. Here's my patterns. So I can choose my side. Maybe I want to have this. Okay, so it's kind of an easy application, but it's sort of fun to do. Now this is an inside, so if I wanted to, I would have to do this inside corner and define what I want. Again, this one takes a little practice. You can do stretches, you can add spaces, you can do all kinds of interesting effects. But if I click OK, here it is stored in my brushes panel. And if I click on, let's just click on the circle. Now there's no corners here. If I click on my circle, I'm just going to get, yikes, really big, my path. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to click on the box this time around the outside edge. So there you can see that I have a different corner piece, and then my stroke or my straight sides are the other one that I had defined. And they're just tiled again, just like the others did. So there's the variety of brushes. Now, to remember what you can use simple paths. You cannot use gradients. You cannot use blends. You cannot use mesh objects or masks. And you cannot put other brush strokes inside of a newly defined brush stroke. And with text, you can use text, but not in the art and pattern brushes. So that's how we can play with the brushes. And like I said, there are many brushes to explore. If you look in your menu here, open up a brush library. Let me drag this over so we can see this. In the options, open up a brush library. A lot of options here, and I would just suggest having fun and exploring all of those options.